Welcome, everybody. My name is Tracy Mitchell. I'm the executive director. I've been with Bay Street. This is the start of my 14th year. And thank you. And it's also, this is the first day in 410 days that we're now open. So Michael, did you get a shot of this fabulous group? Because this is a moment in history I don't want to ever forget.
Or relive.
Yeah, I don't want to remember either. But so it's the start of our 30th anniversary season. And I want to just start today on behalf of myself, on behalf of Bay Street. I actually want to start by apologizing for getting out ahead of ourselves and for not maybe getting the dialogue started in the right way. So today we're here to remedy that and begin a dialogue, answer questions, and we're doing this because I think we're all really here for the right reasons and the same reasons, that we all love our village. And even more so, we all love our waterfront. And many of us, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but many of us, myself included, were a bit horrified by what went up on the waterfront already. And the fact of the matter is, if someone like us did not step in quickly, there would have been more single-family homes on that waterfront. It would have been locked off to all of us, and there would have been nothing that any of us could have done. And thankfully, our mayor and our trustees were all able to put in this waterfront moratorium to make sure that we had time and everybody had time to protect that waterfront. So I would like to thank them for their work and for being here today with us. Thank you. Additionally, I just want to say that I think some of us really love the 7-Eleven, and others of us love Sing City. And we might still, even with that, be able to agree that this stretch along the waterfront has never been the most beautiful part of Sag Harbor. So our mutual goals include beautifying this entrance to the village while still saving the access to the waterfront for everyone in the best way possible, and potentially moving the businesses that are there then to south of the village, the southern end of the village. So we're starting from a point of truly trying to listen and get to a place that works for as many of us as possible. This is just the beginning of a dialogue with many more to come. Nothing today is set in stone except that Bay Street will be building a theater on the 7-Eleven property. So before we go on, I just want to remind everybody why Bay Street exists. It's our mission. Bay Street Theater and the Sag Harbor Center for the Arts is a year-round, not-for-profit professional theater and community center. We endeavor to innovate, educate, and entertain a diverse community through the performing arts. We serve as a social and cultural gathering place, an educational resource, and a home for a diverse group of artists. So that's our reason for being. Thank you. I'll also mention that we partner and support many other nonprofits and those others who may need our support. A few examples include the South Fork Bakery, East End Special Players, American Music Festival, the Ambulance Corps, Sag Harbor Cinema, Eastville, Hamptons International Film Festival, and yay, Anne. We also support bigger issues. When I came, we started a thing called Benefits by Bay Street because I felt that in a time of need, when there were larger issues going on in the world, we should all be trying to help those as well. So we've helped support, and this involves our artists, by the way, because artists are always willing, the musicians, the actors are always willing to stand up and help and do their part. So we did that with the tsunami for Japan, the earthquake in Haiti, and this year we helped our healthcare workers by donating all of our N95 masks, as we had a lot of them. We have a warehouse where we build sets. So of course we had N95 masks, which we donated. We also helped with our Hamptons Arts Network to raise $200,000 this year while we were closed to help support artists locally. Um, and then of course we also raised money for the food banks. And we did this all while we were closed. So, and you all know, many of you know that we do the Literature Live program. This served over 33,000 students all across Long Island for free, along with their educators and teachers. Um, and the other thing that we do is that we also support any student that wants to become a part of any of our classes or any of our camps in the summer. We have full scholarships, partial scholarships, and our box office manager knows that we will never, ever turn away somebody to see theater or be a part of any of our classes because of money. So that, I just want to make sure people understand that. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to the rules of today's forum. After we're done introducing ourselves, we will follow it by a Q&A session. We've set it up with really specific rules so that we can get to as many people as possible. Of course, this won't be the last time, but we have 2 hours today. We have till 6 o'clock. So each person will be given 90 seconds. There are 4 microphones here. We ask that when you come up, the first person that waits online, the next person should wait at least 6 feet behind them, please. And in between, we will wipe off we have people that will wipe down the microphones, okay? But we do ask that you keep your masks on for that. Let's see. There will also should please be no personal attacks. Let's be kind to one another and start from a place of believing that we want to see the best for our village. With that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Bay Street's artistic director and my dear friend who I have not seen since he became a new papa again, which is why he couldn't be at the meeting last week over across the street. So my dear friend, Scott Schwartz.
So yes, I will say what Tracy's referring to is my son was born on April 12th. His name is Simon Lyndon Schwartz, and he'll be out here over the summer. So I hope everyone will get to see him, as well as my daughter Esme, and of course Julia, my wife, who many of you know. Uh, in case you don't know me, I'm Scott Schwartz, the artistic director here. I've been the artistic director at Bay Street for 8 years and have lived in Sag Harbor. I rented my first summer, but bought the house that we have, which is just literally 2 miles from the theater. I've clocked it just off of Noyak Road for 7 years. And one other little bit of trivia is before that time, I've been coming to Sag Harbor for 40 years. My parents had a timeshare at Gurney's in the winter from when I was a little kid, and we would come out every winter for a week or when I was in school for the weekend. And one of the most special days during that time was we would come into Sag Harbor for the day to do Christmas shopping and spend some time and celebrate my mother's birthday at the American Hotel. So Sag Harbor has really been a part of my life for my whole life, and I love it here very, very much. Um, you know, obviously, you're here today because you're interested in and have questions about, or perhaps concerns about, what the exterior of the new Bay Street Theater building is going to be and what it's going to look like. But I wanted to take just a moment of time to talk about why we're doing this in the first place. In other words, what will happen inside that building and why a larger space is necessary for us. First of all, I just want to touch briefly on what theater is, period. You know, it's unlike any other art form in that it's all about people. It's about people coming together as a group to experience something that only happens once, that's ephemeral. Each group that experiences theater on any given night is different than the next. Each group is a community, and the shared experience that that community has entertains us, enlightens us, and can even change us. You know, this is an art form that's been with us for over 3,000 years, Western theater dating back to the Greeks. And it's always been about a community coming together to tell stories and experience art as a group and sharing the spirit and heart and ideas as a group. It's about coming together. And to create this art, it takes people. It takes a lot of people, sometimes a lot of them. And Bay Street Theater, as you know, for the past 8 years and earlier, has been growing. It's been serving Sag Harbor and the whole of the East End. And we want to be a center for our community, a beating heart of life in the center of Sag Harbor. If you're not aware, our current theater, this building where you are sitting right now, we don't own it. It's a rental. And we only have 2 years left on our current lease. So we've been actually looking for a new space for some time. Our landlord, Pat Malloy, has been incredibly generous to us, and we are incredibly grateful to him. But we know that we are never going to be able to buy this space. And so we have to find a new home. This is not going to be able to stay our home for very much longer. So I want to tell you in our new home what we're going to have, what's actually going to be inside the building, not just what's going to be outside. There will be a theater like this one, exactly like this one, 299 seats. It'll have a few more technical tools, our ability to perhaps shift so it can be a thrust theater like this where the audience surrounds the stage, or perhaps turns into a proscenium where the audience is on one side and the cast is on the other, depending on what production needs. But it'll be the same intimate experience you're having today. We'll have a flexible space for our education programs, which have been growing by leaps and bounds, for all of our community partnerships and bringing in groups from the community. And yes, for smaller productions year round. We would love to be producing in the fall, winter, and spring, and having a smaller, flexible space will give us the ability to do that, to bring more work and more art into Sag Harbor all year round. It will have technical spaces to support the technical needs of the stage, and to build the shows that we will be creating. It will have rehearsal space. We have a very small rehearsal space in this building, but this will have a proper rehearsal space so we can do the work that we create all here in Sag Harbor rather than having to start in New York City and elsewhere. Again, bringing more life and more art into our community. It will have office space for all the people who work here, which are almost all people who are local to the area. It will have a larger lobby and courtyards, which are going to be open and accessible to everyone all year round. And one thing that's very important to me is because it will be a new building is it will be fully accessible to people who have special needs. You know, I mentioned my mother a little while ago, and she's now in a wheelchair, and it's difficult for her to get into places. In fact, in Sag Harbor, she can't get into a lot of the places she used to go to. And this new building, very important to me personally, will be accessible to everyone all the time. What are we going to do in this new theater? Well, it's going to be a gathering place for the community. That is our mission, and that's what we will be. We will have education programs. I'm not sure if you're aware, but over the course of the pandemic, we've been doing so many education programs. They've been exploding, and we've done so many more programs for adults. We have education programs every week for adults. We partnered with the AARP, and we have classes that over 80 people have attended online from the AARP for free. And we'll continue to do that, but continue to do it live. And of course, education programs and other programs for young people in our community. We'll be doing more musicals, which I know everyone loves. We'll be doing more work and bringing in a diverse group of artists from both our local community and nationally. We will have more opportunities all around for community groups, community artists, and national and world-renowned artists to create their work. And we'll have more partnerships with other organizations to bring work into Sag Harbor to share with you, our community, and also to take the work that we create together and bring it to other communities around the country and perhaps even around the world. In short, Bay Street is bursting at the seams. We're doing so much, and we're so proud that we've had so much enthusiasm for the work we're doing, and we just simply need more space. There's so much we can do, so much more we can do if we have more space. Yes, to create art that will entertain and illuminate our lives, but also to bring our community, this community, the community of Sag Harbor, together in so many ways. And I believe that this new home for Bay Street will be a home for everyone in Sag Harbor and an asset for our community the whole year round. Thank you so much. And I want to pass it over now to a man who, if he weren't here, none of us would be here, to Steve Hamilton, one of the founders of Bay Street Theater.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. I want to pick up just for a moment, pick up on what Scott said about theater, because something that he said, the theater needs people. It needs a lot of people. Theater is handmade. It's not something that you can push a button and the film rolls. It's a lot of people doing a lot of different jobs. And then in performance, there's more people who come in and experience it. So it needs a certain dimension. The building that you build needs a certain size. And for 30 years, Bay Street has enjoyed the use of this building. And even back in my day, we were bursting at the seams, Scott, 30 years ago. Sybil Christopher, Emma Walton Hamilton, myself, a handful of, well, a small army of volunteers, a small construction crew of local builders, people up and down Main Street, business owners, and a small group of wealthy people got together and built this theater. On opening night, our first show was a production, a world premiere of a production called Men's Lives. It was about the 16-generation-old families, farmer fishing families of the East End. And I have to tell you, on opening night, watching these men and women inside the theater, witnessing their own lives and their ancestors' stories, really changed my attitude, changed my mind about theater and its effect, its contribution, its life within a community in a way that I had never experienced before. And in 30 years hence, I've seen hundreds, thousands of people who have also been changed by the power of theater, not necessarily as dramatically as that first night 30 years ago, but still. So here we are. Again, I want to pick up on what Scott was talking about. You know, this is an existentialist. This is a life and death issue for Bay Street Theater. For 30 years, we've enjoyed being here as renters, as lessees. Patrick Malloy has given us a very favorable lease all of these years, certainly during my time, and it continues with Tracy's and Scott's. But as many times as I asked during it, and subsequently during Tracy's tenure, whether Pat would subdivide his property and sell us this portion of this property, it's just a no, and I understand that. Because of the value of this property, you have to understand it's contiguous property all the way from the restaurant on the wharf, through the arcade, to this building, the gym, the brick building, all of those other small businesses behind here, all the bottom land, and the slips. It's a huge piece of property. And again, during my tenure, during Tracy's tenure, we tried, but it just wasn't to be. I think most recently, Tracy, you asked again, Pat's representative.
I did. I ask almost every year. We have an annual conversation that's not really a conversation. He just sort of says no. And but the last time there was actually someone that was interested that I was bringing to the table who would buy the whole thing, but who would let us buy our portion, because he's always said he would only sell it as one piece. And he said no. He said, tell him to get in line. There were at least 7 other people that he had, I think, ready to buy it.
So it's not for lack of trying. So, you know, my wife and I, my family has lived in Sag Harbor for 30 years. I mean, my kids were born in Southampton Hospital, and they were educated, all of them, all of their education out here in schools. And, we're afraid too. We're afraid of these winds of change that everyone is experiencing out here. This, someone said, wall of money. It is so true. It's frightening. So once again, I reiterate, this is the best, possibly the only possibility that Bay Street will be able to build a new permanent home here in the village of Sag Harbor. That's just, and I was very involved and Em and I both in the cinema, the construction and fundraising of the cinema. I mean, Emma and I raised a couple $100,000, and I volunteered for a couple years producing our itinerant screenings in venues all over the East End, including here. And it's not so much because we were cinephiles. I mean, we love movies, but it wasn't that. It was because the cinema was at risk of becoming a commercial entity, going to the highest price for the best use and that whole thing. And we were able to take that, the group, and April and Eric are sitting up in the back, we were able to take that off the commercial and keep it for the community. And even though I do love Bay Street and I love the fact that there's this opportunity to move, I think that that's important to note too. That what we're doing with this property is keeping it for the community. Now, you may have a lot of reservations about the pictures that you've seen, the things you've heard. But all I'm asking for, all that we're asking for is a reset, is to say, look, let's start working together. Let's build this together. Because how sad it would be at the end of the day if it didn't work, because we just didn't try hard enough to make it work. Thanks very much for being here today. Yeah. And now I'd like to turn over the mic to our angel investor, who's the chairman of the Friends of Bay Street, Adam Potter.
So I'm a little bit more animated, so I have to stand up. I'm Adam Potter. I'm actually really excited to be here to share a lot of information with you and answer all the questions out there, because I know there are a number. First, who am I? I'm a husband. I'm a father of two 7-year-old girls, and we have been coming to the East End for the last 15 years. And we love Sag Harbor. I spent 30 years in the insurance industry, and I was fortunate a few years ago to sell my companies, which were small businesses, and retire at a young age to help raise my family. I'm very blessed to be able to do that. So, as I said, been coming here 15 years, and about a year into my quote retirement, Tracy Mitchell calls me. I said, "Hey, Trace." She said, "Hey, Adam, I'd like you to consider something. Would you consider becoming a board member on Bay Street?" So, well, yeah, I'd consider it, but what is your number one goal? Tell me what that goal is first. She said, well, before I retire, I want to have our own space. I said, Tracy, you have your own space. And she says, no, I don't. It's a rented space. We've rented it for 30 years. She said, we've tried for the last 8 or 10 years and we just can't get our own space. I said, you know what? Instead of me coming on the board of Bay Street, I would rather attack that problem and fulfill your dream and fill Bay Street's dream of creating our own space. So together, we embarked on a journey about 2 years ago. So what do? We looked around and said, okay, what properties for sale? So we looked and we need a big space. And all of a sudden, 22 Long Island Avenue, the 7-Eleven property came up for sale. So I went back to the Bay Street board and said, okay, board, guess what? This property's for sale. We want to move. We want to do this, go do this, go do this. I'm like, whoa, slow down there, Adam. We're really busy right now. And we're normally really busy. And now we have COVID we're dealing with. We don't have the energy, the resources, the time, everything to put towards what's going to take to do this. So I said, well, let me analyze and ask some questions. And so I went back and I looked and I said, well, what happened with the cinema? You know, they started with the Sag Harbor Partnership. What happened to other cultural institutions, museums, theaters, et cetera? What do they do when they're looking for new space? Well, we found out the answer. They create a separate organization. So I went back to the Bay Street Board and said, hey, we want to create a separate organization, a separate nonprofit with the following goals. One, identify the space and purchase that. Two, raise money. Three, work with some architects to create a beautiful building. And four, build a building. That is the goal of Friends of Bay Street. That's it. So what else are we purchasing? What else have we purchased? What land are we bidding on? What did we buy? What are we in contract with? And you know what? I'm going to share that with you right now. So take out your pencils, take out your pens, listen very carefully. Ready? Nothing. Friends of Bay Street is not purchasing any additional buildings, any additional space. We're not in contract. We're not looking for it. We're not leasing, period, end of contract. We are not doing anything else. We have our space. That is our mission. There are lots of rumors around. Are we buying the Laundry? Are we buying M&T Bank? Are we buying Apple Bank? I heard we're buying the American Hotel. No, we are not buying any additional space. I know you'd love that, but we are not
Is that an
buying any
option?
additional space. Period. We're just not doing it. It's all rumor speculation, and it is not true. Okay, so we went to our architects, hired some great architects. Went to our architects and they said, okay, we want you to build a theater for us. I want you to work with Scott and we want you to work with Tracy and we want you to come up with a great space for us. I said, but there are two things that we also want. Number one, we're in a unique location. We need to create access to Steinbeck Park. Because, you know, if we didn't buy it, who knows who would have bought it, but that could have been blocked off. We need to create access to Steinbeck Park. That's number one. Number two, we want unbelievable view sheds to the water. That is really important to us. So I said, okay, doesn't sound like that hard of a job. So a few weeks later, had some meetings and talked to them, and they said, you know, we have an idea. I said, okay, what's your idea? He said, there's this building. You know, I said, okay, it's 2 Main Street. We think Friends of Bay Street should buy that, knock it down, and make it part of the park. I'm like, okay, that's nice, but that's not our mission. That's not our goal. That's not what we're here to do. We're not a community preservation fund. That's not us. We're here to build a theater. So slept on that and talked about it and looked at some diagrams. They did some great diagrams, and you'll see some of those in a few minutes. I'm excited to share those with you. So you know what? They're right. This would be an unbelievable thing to do with a village. So what do? Okay, we need to, number one, raise some money. We need to, two, is find out if this building, who owns it, if it's for sale, and what else? We need to find out how we're going to replace or how we're going to move and help move some of the tenants in there. How are we going to sell it, tear it down, and sell it back to CPF? So that was the goal. So we created a separate for-profit company with that mission. Buy the property, help relocate businesses, tear it down, and sell it to CPF. Okay, sounds pretty easy, but we need money. So we started talking to a lot of people. This is our goal. I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I said, well, let's talk about the P&L. This organization or this company will likely lose money. And you know what's interesting? Everybody I talked to, everybody that we talked to was excited about it and said, sign me up. It's like, wait, I never, you know, what, how does that work, right? You're not doing this for a tax deductible donation. You're not doing this for a tax, a tax break, a loss on your taxes. Why are you doing it? So we asked them, why are you doing this? Every person we asked this question to, you know what they said? Because we love this village. We think it's a beautiful village, and we think it's going to make this exponentially better. And we want to create views down Main Street. We want to create access to the park. So we were really excited about that. We hope we are successful in purchasing it. We hope we are. What else? So Tracy and I have had a lot of meetings, Scott and Steve and other people. So, well, wait a second, we have a problem. What's the problem now? Well, we have 11 businesses, small businesses in the 7-Eleven building, and where are they going to go? And we said, we need to help them find a spot. Do we need to? No. Do we want to? Yes. So we went out and we said, let's talk to all the brokers out there and find out what commercial space is available in Sag Harbor. That should be pretty easy. A lot of things should be pretty easy, which we're finding out are not very easy, right? So we said, okay, let's look for commercial space for these folks and see what we can do and we can help manage the situation. And guess what? There's nothing available. There's no commercial space, nothing short-term, nothing medium-term, nothing long-term. So we said, oh boy, what are we gonna do? So that's when I said, well, you know what? I personally am gonna step up to the table. I am not a billionaire. I did well in business, but I'm not a billionaire. I don't have billionaires behind me. So I contacted the people that own the Dodds and Eater building because I heard they weren't coming back this year. So I said, well, would you care to sell? Here's what I would like to do. I want to help move some businesses over into this area. So luckily, we were able to make an agreement with the Dodds and Eater, and we're purchasing that building at 7 Bridge Street. I personally am doing that. There's no we, it's Adam Potter. I also am buying some of the houses behind there. Why the heck are you doing this, Adam? 4 reasons. Number one, we need to move a number of local businesses to this area. I've been very vocal about this. We need to move these and find places. I found places now. Let's start moving these local businesses there. Number 2, we need to create more local businesses. What I've heard is, excuse me, we need a dry cleaner. We need a shoe cobbler. We would love a butcher. I'm a huge supporter of local businesses. I was one for many, many years. I want to bring those services into this area of the village. We're displacing potentially a lot of space, a lot of businesses. We need to create that space for them. So that's the second reason why we're doing it, why I'm doing it. Third, workforce housing. We have no workforce housing in the village. I want to create workforce housing. Who is going to be running all of these shops, all of these businesses? We want them to be part of the community. We want them to live here. We need to create workforce housing, and my goal in buying some of this land is to do so. Fourth, for those of you who don't know, this whole area that I'm talking about, Dodds and Eater and behind, is in a huge floodplain. It is in a bad location, right? Dodds and Eater is on the sewer, but nothing else is. It is one of the last remaining areas that is not on the city, on the village sewer. Guess what? They all have their own individual, septic systems. They are creating an environmental mess for the land and for the water. I want to work with every other location, every other home in that area, and we need to go to Aiden, our trustee, and say, we need to get this area on the septic, on the sewer. That's a huge priority of mine. So the 4 things again are, number 1, relocate current existing local businesses. 2, create new local businesses. 3, create affordable housing for the village. And 4, fix an environmental mess, because it is an environmental mess. Let's talk about the parking lot. Yes, we did lease the parking lot. We also had a meeting with the mayor and trustee and Deputy Mayor Tom. And one of the things that I have said from the very beginning is we want to keep this parking lot open for the community. This is a community lot, and this needs to stay a community lot. This represents almost, I think, 10% or 15% of the overall parking today. We need to keep this as a community parking lot, and we need to figure out how to do that. And we're focused on doing it. So, excuse me. I want to talk a minute about the businesses. So there are 11 local businesses in the 7-Eleven building. Guess what? 3 of those we have already helped relocate. 2, Sean Edison Salon and Shirley's, who does massage therapy, have relocated to a building that I purchased on Rose Street. They have long-term lease. They're very happy. And we helped we fought fostered that move. The third one, she is ill, and unfortunately, we helped relocate her to an area in Mid-Island. We also talked with 5 other businesses in that facility, in that property, and we have transition plans for them that they are very excited about. And they will happen over time. So we need to talk about the white elephant in the room. Let's talk about the 7-Eleven. What the heck happened? Right? You want to know? I'm here to answer the question. What happened to the 7-Eleven? We started discussions with 7-Eleven late last year. We held a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations, and they had a lot of demands. And I was like, okay, let's try to work through this. In February, it became apparent from both sides that we were not going to be able to meet their demands. So we agreed that on April 30th, 7-Eleven would leave. We both us as well as 7-Eleven realized this on, I think it was like the 13th of February, something around that date. So I said, Tracy, we got a problem. I said, this community needs a convenience store. We do. We need a convenience store, and we need to support that. So what are we going to do? Hopefully by Memorial Day, we are putting a new convenience store into the 7-Eleven space. Okay. Well, tell me about the convenience store. Number one, locally managed and operated. We're hiring many of the local workers that were here running the 7-Eleven. 2, same products, same or cheaper pricing than today. You'll still be able to get your 99-cent coffee. That's really important. You'll still be able to get a number of household products. That's really important. 3, what are the hours, Adam? 6 a.m. to midnight. We have been told that what happens at 3 o'clock in the morning in the parking lot keeps our police commissioner up at night. We have to stop that. And we're excited about that. Now, for those of you who don't know, 7-Eleven here was a corporate store. It wasn't a franchise store. It was a long time ago, but for the last many, many years, it has been a corporate store, right? Maybe a lot of you don't know, it was in the top 3 revenue producing stores in the country for 7-Eleven. That's great for 7-Eleven, but how is that good for our community? So what are we doing as a community-based convenience store? Number one, there's an organization called the South Fork Bakery, which Tracy mentioned. They hire special needs individuals that create baked goods, and they sell their baked goods. We're going to carry baked goods from the South Fork Bakery. We're going to carry locally made products as well. I think that's really important. Number 2, we're going to hire special needs individuals within this community-based store. People that live in this community that have special needs, we need to create a place for them to work. Number 3, we are going to donate a certain percentage of our profits to community-based organizations, soccer teams, baseball teams, organizations that we can help support. We're going to donate a percentage of our profits to do that. I had a conversation with the fire department. They want to build a museum to house their historic fire engines. We want to help contribute to that. We want to not just take from the community, we want to be part of the community, and we're committed to doing that. So we're excited. We think if we're successful with 2 Main Street, we will also take the same approach in working with every business there and helping find space to make sure that they can also relocate. We're tremendously excited. Now, before we open up for questions, I just want to show a couple additional pictures of the theater that we showed a few weeks ago, and a little bit more detail so that you can actually look at that. So first, so this is the theater that we talked about. And I think we did not do a good job, and I apologize for that. We didn't do a good job. This looks like a big, big building. But let's talk about the building itself. If you look from about the 3rd tree in to about the last tree over there, that's the actual building. From the very end where it says Bay Street to almost the 3rd street in, that is just a gate. That's like an architectural feature. And same thing on the other side. Those are just architectural features. It's a welcome gate, it's an entrance gate, it's an architectural feature. And if you're standing on the street, let's look at the next slide. If you're standing on the street, look, you can see right through that. Again, what's behind there? It's a big open plaza. Same on the other side. It's a big open plaza. And the lobby itself that we're envisioning here, you can see right through that as well to the park. So we're trying to create a very open space. I mean, look at a theater. There's not many windows in here. We're trying our best to make this as open as area as possible. So I think one of the problems that we did, and again, it was our fault, is to show that this is really just an entrance gate. It's not part of the building. Architecturally it is, but it's not actually part of the building. Next, let's talk about height. The building that's been designed starts at 18 feet and goes to 39 feet. If we look at our neighbor next door, we're 8 feet less than the neighbor next door. That's almost a floor less than the neighbor next door. That's what the theater looks like. Again, starting at 18, going up to 39. So the average height of our building that we're proposing is 28.5 feet high, not 35. We don't want to build a big, box of 35 feet. We want to create as much open space as possible. Now, on the next slide, you'll see how much space is above the 35-foot mark. 4% of the total building, a very small percent. Why is this there? Because we're a theater and we need space above the theater to do certain things. So it's a very, very, very small percent. 4% is above the building. Now, the next shot I want to show you, which you've all seen before, this is the view if you're standing, way above on the bridge, Sag Harbor today, right? And before I show you the next picture, I want to show you that this is what the architects, this is what they say. And now let's turn to the next one about what it could look like in the future. So when you're coming off that bridge, you see a really good welcome to Sag Harbor. When you're walking down Main Street, you can see the park. You can see the water. This is the unbelievable viewshed that we wanted to create. This is the access to Steinbeck Park that we want to create. We're not done. We're hopeful we're gonna be able to do this. It's not done. And there's still a lot of talk about it. So we're really excited about the potential that we're sharing with you guys today. Before we take questions and comments, just two more small points. One is we want to work with the community. We're part of the community. We want to work with the community, and that's really important to us. We are probably one of the few, if not the only project, development, organization, company, whatever you want to call it, we're probably one of the few, if not the only one, that has come to the community months before going to planning department. Most people go to the planning department first. They don't have community meetings. We view this as a civic building. We view this as an important building for the community, and we want to welcome your comments and your ideas. And we really mean that. Second, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of rumors, a lot of angst that's been created over the last week. Guess what? I want to apologize. Personally, I want to apologize. I helped foster and create that, right? I'm sorry. I really am. I think it's time we hit the reset button. We're sharing everything about what we're doing, what I'm doing personally, what Friends of Bay Street's doing, what this new company's doing. I'm sorry we didn't get off on the right foot. It was all well-intentioned. We all love the village, and we want to make it a greater place. And with that, I'd love to open up for questions.
So I'd like to ask if anyone wants to come down to ask questions, you should come down. There's 4 mics here, and we'll just start at one end and go across. Again, please do not stand right behind the person.
A couple other mics here, too.
There's a couple mics all the way around. There's one right behind this camera as well. but please stand 6 feet back if you're going to wait online, or you can just wait in your seat and wait till that person sits down. Okay, so we'll start here on the right. If you'd please identify yourself and remember that you have 90 seconds and we'll have a little clock running.
Try to be done in 90 seconds. My name is Maziar Behruz. I live around the corner. I also happen to be an architect. I've built many modern buildings. I'm not against modernism or modern architecture. I appreciate what you all said. I feel you brought some humanity to the discussion, to hear each one of your experiences and feelings about the project. So that's good. I feel good about that. What I'm puzzled about is how the product that you showed previously with this building is disconnected with everything you've said tonight. There seems to be a case where you went out and searched for an architect or a project that would almost negate everything you said. And I'm puzzled about that. The texture scale of Sag Harbor, what you love, what you all love, what you've all lived around and you know really well, the small sizes of buildings, the punched out windows, double hung or not, the quilted texture, the kind of complexities that exist have been annihilated in your building. You've created a singular, iconic structure. And what makes it difficult to understand is, instead of looking at Sag Harbor and saying, wow, this is great, we don't need it to be greater, it's great, and using its texture, its scale, its urbanism, its village plan to enhance your project, you've gone out to East Hampton and looked at McKim, Mead and White oceanfront houses.
We're keeping it to 90 seconds.
Okay, and use that as a precedent. So look at Sag Harbor, please, and redo your project. I think this one can be discarded completely.
So I'd like to personally comment on that. There are a lot of great architects out there. And if you put all these great architects in a room, they would have a lot of debate and discussion on what they think is right and what somebody else thinks is right. And I respect you. I really respect your opinion. And I would like to put you in touch and have a debate with our architect about why they feel completely differently. There's always two sides to it, or maybe more, to a story. And I think that it's important that we hear your opinion and they can share, well, wait a second, we looked at all of these different things within Sag Harbor over time, because what's here today is not what was here 30 or 50 or 100 years ago. They went and did the research, what was here hundreds of years ago, and brought some of that back to this building. So I would encourage a dialogue with you and our architects, because I think that would be important, because I'm not an architect and nobody on stage is, and we can't answer your comments about how high windows are or anything else. But we can put you in touch with our architect and he can have that debate.
I can
with
do
you.
better. I can make red lines of his drawings and send them to you. I'll close with this comment. If you want to see his work and what his work looks like, go to Bridgehampton. Stand across the street and look at the addition to Topping Rose. It looks like a power station. Scaleless building. Just all you have to do is look at that building. That's my opinion,
Yep.
and I just wanted to say it.
No, and I appreciate it. And
Can I
as you know,
just-
as an
can I just
architect,
make one more
architects
comment?
can look at different
No,
designs.
I'm not
and do
speaking as an
different
architect,
designs.
even though I
So
am one.
okay.
I spoke as just a citizen of Sag Harbor who lives around the corner, literally. from
Okay.
this
Thank you,
building.
Maziar.
Thank you.
Can I just
Appreciate
make
it.
one comment about scale? Because it's come up a number of times. I wonder if the watch case factory, when it was built, was considered out of scale to the historical nature of the buildings around it, or let's see, or this building, Plant 39, the Grumman Corporation, same thing. No, it's a factory, and I just want to touch on that one more time. That the theater is a place where things are made. It's got to have a certain size because of the amount of people in, and what our architects are trying to do is create that size that we need and still create something visually and exciting.
Great. I'd like to move on quickly, though, because I want to get through as many people. Duncan Darrow?
Yeah, hi, I'm Duncan Darrow. I'm a lawyer. I've lived here 40 years. Started a charity about 20 years ago. I'm head of what's called the Trust for Sag Harbor, which is a 501c3 entity working with the Suffolk County authorities. They will act as conduit issuers. So we will end up, when the smoke clears, with $50 million cash. I will offer you or whoever really owns your building a 10% premium. That's the first thing we're going to buy. And then we're going to go up and down Main Street and find the people who really want to retire and sell their building for a fair price and be sure that it's part of the heritage of this village. And we're going to end up fundamentally just like the Conic Land Trust, except instead of having land, we're going to have buildings. They'll generate revenue. We won't pay tax for tax exempt. We could pay property tax. Once again, we're tax exempt. And when the bonds become due, they'll become due, and the people of the Sag Harbor will probably all tax themselves because they love this place that much, a penny or whatever it is to repay those bonds. And sir, I don't know you, but, and I'm sure you don't intend it, but you sound like Robert Moses. You sound almost like the mayor of Sag Harbor, that someone has endowed you with this massive amount of authority, and you're going to kind of remake half this village in I guess your image. And you should really, when you're done, just look at the video of your speech today and just think about it. That's all.
Yes?
Shepherd. I live on Sag Road. I just want to say a couple of things. The first thing is, I appreciate you saying that you apologize and you want to do a reset, but I'd like to give you some feedback that you started off and told us all to get out our pens and paper and that you were purchasing nothing other than that building, and then went on to list a whole number of things that you were purchasing. So I think in your endeavor to be more transparent, I think you should be a little bit more clear, and that seemed like a little bit of a trick in how you presented this. Second of all, I'd like to know, are you pledging here today in front of your neighbors and what I believe are members of the press that the purchases you have made will only be used for the uses you described, and that the parking lot will remain fully available to the village, and that you are not purchasing additional property like the laundromat and the things that we've heard? And then also, I'd like to know, are you willing to disclose the funders to these entities that you have formed?
Sure. I mean, yes, absolutely. Let's take each one of those points. I think I clearly said, and if I didn't, I apologize, that the Friends of Bay Street is only purchasing 22 Long Island Avenue. We have been heard rumors that the Friends of Bay Street are purchasing a lot of other spaces. That's not true. Friends of Bay Street is only purchasing the one property that we have.
If you
If-
create a bunch of different, that's
It's not,
semantics
it's
for
not,
the
it's,
public, we don't know the difference between what you legally have set up lots of different
There-
entities.
There's not a lot of legal, it's very, okay, I'll try to make it very simple. Friends of Bay Street is designed to just purchase that place, the Long Island Avenue, and build a theater. That's all Friends of Bay Street. We've heard lots of rumors that Friends of Bay Street is purchasing all these other buildings. It is not. The only reason why we formed the company to potentially purchase 2 Main is to buy that and hopefully be able to turn that into parkland. That is the only. Friends of Bay Street has nothing to do with that property. Okay, I'm trying to be very, very systematic and tell you exactly who owns what and why they own it. So Friends of Bay Street, their mission is to build a theater. That's what they're doing. This separate group of really, generous individuals want to make a better place want to make more parkland for the village. I don't think that's a bad idea. And then third is I personally, it's not Friends of Bay Street. I'm not saying it's Friends of Bay Street. It is not the people involved in the potential purchase of 2 Main. It is me personally. And I did it for the reasons I outlined.
And so are you pledging that the use of the things that have been purchased will be as you described them here?
Absolutely. Local businesses, moving local businesses over. Absolutely. Creating new local businesses. I've already contacted every commercial broker that I can think of on this site. Say, where can we find a local dry cleaner that can come in and be a dry cleaner for the village? Where can we find a local shoe cobbler? If anybody out there knows one, please contact me. So absolutely. Workforce housing, yes. This village needs workforce housing. I'm sorry I'm getting emotional because I am really a believer in this. And for environmental mess, let's talk to Aiden. Yes, it is creating an environmental mess, and we need to clean this up. And we're committed to doing that. So I think those four
And the
goals,
parking lot will be for the whole village,
as
community.
we've had discussions with both the mayor and the trustees, and that is, they can tell you, that is the exact thing we said. We want to keep this open for the community, period, and a conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Hi, folks.
Yep.
You gave us a lot to chew on. 90 seconds is not a lot of time to answer. So I'm just going to at his bullet points. Tracy, in your introduction, you made a couple of comments about what was that are simply not true. And you ended by saying, if you all didn't buy 7-Eleven, that property would be covered with additional condominiums or townhouses. None of that is true or necessarily true, but there's no time for me to take you through all of that. You also talk about the new theater as a given, as if the village government is on board and you'll get what you want. I just caution you that's not a presumption you should make. You've got miles to go to sell this idea to a series of boards. And we should observe that Adam and I talk regularly, and I'm not telling you anything I hear publicly that I don't say to you privately. Probably the key point in the time allowed is you're in the wrong place with this theater. You bought or are about to lease the National Grid. You bought Dodds and Eder. I've been talking to you for 6 months or a year. Why don't you move this wonderful theater onto Bridge Street? Don't take up half our remaining open waterfront. Don't take up all that sky plane. Don't put, as I just learned tonight, 2 wings on the theater that further take sky and space and view, when available to you up the street is property you already now control through one hat or another. So the idea that the only place this works is on the 7-Eleven property is simply not true and not provable. I would renew my offer. If you will consider and work with us to take your plans up Bridge Street, I will be your best friend in government. I'm a 6-year trustee who aspires to be mayor. I would be your friend if you would make this one concession to what this elected government would like to see, and that is do not take so much of our hard-won waterfront. It took us 4 years plus to get Steinbeck Park. We have plans for Steinbeck Park. We had, before the town of Southampton, when you bought 7-Eleven, we had an active live application for CPF. You bought it without a how do you do. We had a $6 million commitment from the supervisor to do 50% or $6 million of an acquisition under CPF. That money's disappeared into the ether. The cure for all of this, and I think giving comfort to the confusion that's out there, go up the street. The theater does not need, for any of its essential functions, to be on the most precious waterfront left on the East End. Thank you.
I think it's important to address a couple of things because, as you pointed out, I want to make sure everybody understands the truth. The truth is, yes, the village, and I know it was led by you, Jim, looked at buying that property for $12 million, $6 million for the village and $6 million for CPF. The price of the property was a lot higher than that. They were not going to sell it for $12 million. We were one of 5 bidders, and we were not the highest bidder on the property. We bid just over $13 million. There were higher bidders, and they awarded it to us because of what they thought and what they hope will be able to be on that property. So the premise that we came out and stole it from the village is not accurate because the private owners were not going to sell it for $12 million. They had many more offers that were higher than that. I think that's really important. I think the other thing that's really important is, well, it doesn't belong here. we want to move it over here to Bridge Street. Well, let's talk about Bridge Street. Let's talk about the National Grid lot. That has been a Superfund site. National Grid in our lease will not allow a building on that lot. Period. End of conversation. And I hate to be so matter of fact about it, but this is coming from their lawyers, their environmentalists, their risk management department. We have asked. We have said, can we put housing on that lot? No. Can we put a commercial building? No. No, no, no. We do not want, we are leasing it for 99 years, and National Grid will not allow a building on that lot. They spent over I think $140 million cleaning up that site. So the idea that, number one, that we stole the lot from the village because the village was going to spend 12 million, we paid more than that, and they had a higher bidding above that. So I think that is kind of a not an accurate statement. And the statement that move it over move it over to the parking lot, we can't. We have asked for over a year to build on that lot, and we are not allowed. So to be able to say, well, just move it down there, that is not a possibility. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that we tried. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Eric Adley, thank you so much for doing this tonight. I stalked Adam on LinkedIn or Instagram or something and sent him a bunch of questions, and he answered all of them today. So thank you for doing that. My kids came here. I'm from Seattle. My wife is from here in the city. Her family bought the house in '72, and we call this home base now. We live all around the world, and you answered all my questions. The one ask I would have is, this is different than the Hamptons, and it's a great thing. And you talk about 2 Main Street. Please, if you could do things to keep Sag Harbor, keep Sag Harbor gritty. This is a town my wife told me about when she grew up. There was more bars than anything else on Main Street. You said this was a factory. Leave something in here that maintains the character of this town. And I know that vista into the park is amazing, but once you get that, we're never getting this ugly building that has great local businesses. So think about, when you do this, how we keep Sag Harbor, Sag Harbor. This is not the Hamptons. Like, I could have lived anywhere out here. I live here. I could have gone to Southampton. I don't want everything fancy. I don't want to tuck in my shirt and wear shoes when I go out. I want to wear barefoot to 7-Eleven and buy milk at 3 a.m. So if you can keep the character of this town that had Grumman factories and Boulevard watch factories, but Kimmel's goes in the ground, clean that up. Let's keep this town gritty and keep it Sag Harbor. Your building is beautiful. I love it. I agree with Jim. Like, move it somewhere else. I love Roger Ferris. I think it's great, but let's keep some stuff that keeps this a gritty town where people can buy milk at 2 in the morning in diapers. So good luck to it. My comments have nothing to do with Bay Street. I think it's great. My kids went here when they went to Sag Harbor Elementary, but I love this town, not because it's the Hamptons. So consider that, please. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a person over here. Yes.
My name's Pamela Kern, and I've been here many times and had many great events here with you guys. Now, Peter, you say you want to help the community and you want to have low-income housing? Is that right?
Workforce housing.
Is it workforce for people who already live here, or is it workforce for your theater?
No, absolutely. It's workforce housing for people that actually live here.
You're going to build housing on pollution to do that.
On what? I'm sorry?
On Rose Street?
On Rose Street and Bridge Street, correct.
Not correct. Because this village has a plan in place. Chapter 285, wetlands, okay? They're held responsible. They're the ones that are going to inevitably make the decisions, along with your ZBA and everybody else, okay? You haven't been to anybody. Our kids are afraid of what you're doing. Our kids are afraid that they're not going to be able to stay here. And I have one of those kids. My whole thing is, you flip-flop on a couple of things, and it doesn't make any sense. It's not the Met you're building, okay? It needs to look like Sag Harbor. That doesn't look like Sag Harbor. It has to have a brick front, or it has to have some brick to it. You want to be airy. That's a wonderful thing. I'm sorry. It doesn't fit. When I helped build the school, all right, our biggest thing was, don't change the front of the school. You change the front of the school, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And we didn't. We made sure we went back and we didn't change anything in the front. And we got our way. But I'm going to tell you something. If you keep all that's going on right now, and like I said, these kids are afraid. They're afraid that, number one, they couldn't come to these things. Some of them haven't had all their shots. Some of them haven't been able to do what they're supposed to be doing. And they're not able to be here to voice their opinions.
Well, let me just say our time is out. We did have this available online for people to listen to, for anyone to join
I
in.
understand that.
Yeah.
That's
so-
not what I'm saying. If we did it where we did it in the park last week and people were able to come to it, younger people could take lunch and come over to it.
Yeah, and they could come to this as well. So thank you for your comments, so. Mhm.
Mike, thanks. I do just want to point out that for concerns about kids not being, or community members not being able to come to Bay Street in general, I mean, I understand today if someone wasn't vaccinated, that given the times we're living in, that was important to us, and it's why we provided it online and also accepted questions in advance from people who wanted to submit them. We work really hard to make the theater accessible to everyone in the community. We keep our ticket prices as low as possible. As you probably know, the first performance of every main stage show we do is called a pay what you can performance, which means you can come for a nickel. And that's incredibly important to us. And I understand that you love Bay Street, and I appreciate that, but I do take slight umbrage at the suggestion that in some way Bay Street, whether it's in this building or in another building, is trying to keep people out. Quite the contrary. We're trying to bring people in, and we do everything we can economically to make that possible for everyone in the community.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Gilbert. I've owned a house here for like 20-some years. For Mr. Potter, just a clarification question, please. You said that you formed a for-profit corporation to purchase 2 Main Street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what's the name of that?
I believe it's 2 Main Street LLC.
And where's it incorporated?
It's incorporated in Delaware.
In Delaware?
Yep.
Okay. And are you willing to disclose the principals?
There are a number of principals within the organization.
Well,
As far as the donors, you're asking about the donors?
no, I'm asking about the officers and
Yeah,
directors.
right now, I believe there's 2 officers, me and one other individual who's at the bank. And we set that up because we could, and it was easy. And it was to raise the money for that organization, for that purpose. I'm not contributing any money toward that.
So you have a for-profit corporation to purchase land that you're going to turn into a park? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, let's go back to the hope, right? We hope to buy the building. We hope to relocate. We will, if we are successful in in buying the building, we will assist the local business there to help relocate. We will then tear down the building, and it is our hope to sell that back to CPF. That is the goal of the company.
Well, why are you doing it as a for-profit then?
Longer to set up a for-profit than a nonprofit, and it's also there's no.
You're not answering my
I'm
question.
I'm answer. That is not a mission that I'm aware of that is allowable as a non. I don't believe a nonprofit can have a mission of going out and raising money and buying properties. I don't think that is a permissible use for a nonprofit under the IRS guidelines.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to preface in my 90 seconds, which this doesn't create good. Oh, I'm sorry. You may know me. I serve on a board with Tracy Happily. She's a wonderful board member of ESP. I think that this has been a terrific theater and a great part of this community, which makes it all the more sad that what's happening now is alienating the community from Bay Street, and you need to take that seriously. For Mr. Potter, so we have 3 entities: Friends of Bay Street, 2 Main Street, the LLC, and you personally, right? I spent many years working in arts administration. I worked on many capital campaigns. Typically, an established nonprofit, because it is indeed difficult to establish a nonprofit that with the big donor base, creates a capital fund, and donors donate to the capital fund, and the organization buys the property, builds the building, which then they completely control. From what I'm seeing, your group, Friends of Bay Street, control this piece of property. And I find that disturbing not only for Sag Harbor, but for Bay Street, which I love. Who are the donors for Friends of Bay Street and your LLC? And are you going to create any more LLCs to buy any more property in our village for your grand design?
Let me answer the last one. No. No, I have no desire to create any more LLCs or buy any more property, period. What was your first question? I'm sorry.
The
what-
one that people keep asking you in a variety of different ways. Who are the donors? Because you must know that there are some pretty frightening rumors about who the donors are.
Absolutely, and I've heard a lot of those rumors. We have literally hundreds of donors. Some of them are in the audience today that have donated substantial amount of money.
Will you release to the press and to the people of Sag Harbor a full, complete accounting of the donors to Friends of Bay Street and the LLC that you've created, and evidence that the money that has gone into the purchase of these other properties comes from you personally?
So we are required by IRS to release all of our donors. That's a requirement in our tax, which are public information. I also want to address,
But when are we going to see them?
When we-
Because people have researched the Friends of Bay Street. I can tell you who the donors of Bay Street are. I can tell you.
So just to be very clear about this, when people donate to us, there are a number of people, if you open our playbill, you'll see anonymous a number of times. And the reason you see that is because people don't want to be bothered when someone like me comes around and sees a $50,000 donor listed in Ann Chason's The Hamptons International Film Festival. I see who that donor is, and of course I'm going to call them. But so a lot of people do anonymous. But to Adam's point, at the end of the year, when the tax returns are all done, and we all must file like any other for-profit business, nonprofits must file, and the names are listed. That's how it's done. And so to stand here and say, am I going to read off a name, or is he going to read off a list of 200 people or 300 or thousands? And there are people in this room that have donated millions. We cannot do that. That is not the way we run it. But you can see on our I-990s who donated.
But I think we should also answer this question. There are people that donate to other organizations, even within Sag Harbor. From what I understand, some of the largest donors to the cinema were anonymous. And they become anonymous because, number one, they just want to do good. And number two is because they don't want everybody knocking on their door asking for money.
You know, I'm sorry, we're beyond our 90 seconds, which is not a good way to foster goodwill. But I have to tell you, in my years of doing fundraising for everything from New York City Ballet to the East End Special Players, in my experience, most big donors to capital campaigns want to be acknowledged and have their names on buildings and
That's
have
wrong.
their names in the press. And sorry, all your donors have to do to help our community feel some trust in this process, because you know the community does not feel trust in the process, which is a huge change from the way we felt about this wonderful theater company over the decades. To help our community feel some trust in the process, ask your donors to come forward.
I would also just, one last comment. I would say that if I look at the New York Ballet, because I go to the New York Ballet.
New York City
And
Ballet.
New York City Ballet, and I open up the playbill, I see anonymous a number of those places as well.
Yeah.
But so the people that want to rename anonymous, if someone wants to give the Friends of Bay Street money to build a theater and say, listen, here is a chunk of money, but I don't want the public accolades. There are different types of people in this world.
There's plenty. We will have a bunch, believe me, there will be more plaques on this, and more naming opportunities. Those people, you're right. There are people who want to have their names on things, and there are others who don't.
My friends,
So-
this is not engendering trust.
Okay.
It's not engendering trust.
Sir,
Next, please.
Hi, my name is David Griffin. I own a house in Noyak and I love Bay Street Theater, but I do have concerns. One thing I can speak to is I've heard people say that the first time they ever came to Bay Street was when the winter music shows started. When the fireside sessions began, a lot of local workforce came here for the first time. Now I'm hearing people say they're worried that now that the theater now will not have local bands like Gene Casey and Nancy
Oh.
Atlas, and they won't be performing because the new place will be too expensive. Can you speak to that point? And
Yes.
would you change the programming so it would exclude local bands from having a showcase here?
Not, I would love to speak to that. I have to tell you personally that the programming in that regard, all winter long, will not, we will always have people like Nancy Atlas and our local bands. Those are our artists that we are committed to forever, forever. No matter what kind of theater we're putting on, no matter whether we have a rehearsal space or whatever to have other shows in, we will always have that for our wintertime programming. That is a promise that I know Scott and myself, it's just, we love our local artists. They are the ones that are actually stepping forward every time when I mention these benefits by Bay Street.
Absolutely.
It's not some out of town folks. No, it is Nancy Atlas. It is Gene Casey and the Lone Sharks. It is Joe Lauro. Those are our go-to people who have done us in great stead all these years. And I would never have this theater without them.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for raising the point.
Will just basically affirm from my perspective exactly what Tracy said. You know, if anything, having a space that has more facilities will allow us to give more opportunities for local artists to perform, and that's deeply important to me as well. So thank you for that question. It's really great to be able to address.
Sir.
Bob Weinstein, longtime resident of Sag Harbor, and thank you for hosting this. I think that there has been a lot of confusion and a lot of concern, I think rightly so. But the fact that you came forward and apologized, I think means a lot. Steve said something to me that was really interesting, talking about film as opposed to theater, and how theater is developed and comes to being compared to film, where you know press a button and it appears. You need a lot of people, but there's plenty of very powerful film that is made with a few number of people. As just like there's big theater productions and small theater productions, and I think we've all seen some small theater productions here that have been wonderful. I can think of Evita as an example. But
Thank you.
now, that said, as one creative professional to a group of creative professionals, far be it for me to say that you shouldn't have a bigger production facility to create larger productions. And of course, if that's your dream, then maybe it's the wrong dream for Sag Harbor. Because Sag Harbor, we're talking about character. Part of Sag Harbor's character is scale. I was very involved as a member of Save Sag Harbor over the last 5 years, trying to keep the size of the residential district under control. There's many people. There was a off-Broadway show, I think, a few years ago called "I Love You, Now Change," right?
I love you, you're perfect, not change.
Right. Well, that's how people approach Sag Harbor. I love Sag Harbor. It's perfect, but God forbid I should live in a small house. You know, I want all the amenities that a big house only can provide. Well, maybe we're asking too much from ourselves as Bay Street. Maybe you're asking for something that's too big to allow big productions, when in fact, if you need that in order to grow, sadly, maybe Sag Harbor isn't the place for you. I don't want to see Bay Street leave, because I think it is a big economic driver in the village, and it's a beloved part of the cultural institution and makeup of the village. But maybe what needs to be considered is that the scale you're asking for in the building, and not even talking about whether it should be brick or whether it should be wooden slats, maybe it's too big. You know, and maybe that is part and parcel with some of the change that we see happening in Sag Harbor that we don't want to see happening. Maybe we love our beloved Bay Street and its intimate productions that don't need to be, you know, Busby Berkeley, you know, productions and everything that, you know, that would need in order to make that happen. So I would say that scale is a big part of character. And you can mention things like the, you know, torpedo factory as something that already existed. But that existed before 1972 when Sag Harbor was designated as a National Register Historic District, which meant that it was a snapshot of what it was then. Now, I'm not saying that Sag Harbor can't change and shouldn't change, but it can't change to the degree, at least that the renderings seem to indicate you're asking for. I would bet if you took what you designed, put it on a Xerox machine, and reduced it by 50%, you'd have a lot more open minds here in this audience than you currently have. It's the same thing with the Bialski buildings. Too big. We all agree with that. You say you're only 4% is going over the allowable height limit. So bring it down, figure it out, make it smaller. Let's work together. Let's protect the scale, the character, and the authenticity of this beloved village.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Christian. I'm born here, raised here. Dagenham, I'm going to die here probably. I've danced on the stage floor and I've come sit in theaters, in this theater. And I think there's something to be said for what Ms. Kern was making for earlier. Mr. Potter, I wonder for you, when you go about your day here, you've come here as many people have, not being born and bred here and not walking amongst the dirt for quite some time. And since I've left Sag Harbor to go work, I have a career in servicing the arts. And I love theater, I love live entertainment, and I love motion picture. I've been able to build a living of which I can eat off of it. And the problem I have always had with this and learning about it and discovery, the imagery I see is trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. If you want a big scale, if you want any scale of anything production, there are going to be trucks and people, and there's going to be paint coming in and out. Where's a loading dock going to go? Where's all these, just for the theater problem that you have? One of the first things and a number of my peers said, just stick it in the woods, in potato field. You can have all your fun out there and have it be near the S92 bus that people who come to work ride in, or near the train. You're going to have people, this great palace of wonderment and your vision and this great, you're going to do the town, but who's going to come? Who's going to get here? People don't have cars, people don't have internet. The greater surrounding population, and I know you guys are dead set on it. You committed, you've laid out the funds. The die has been cast, and now it's kind of like do or die for this, and we're all standing in this waiting to see, oh, what's going to happen when this comes to term. So I ask really, Mr. Potter and everyone, if you love it so much, sometimes the hardest things to realize with love is just, it's best to leave it as it is. Just go be happy. You're retired. You've had immense success. Just go be with your family. You don't want a part of the circus, I'm telling you. It's crazy.
Thank you, Kristen.
Can I just address one thing, just so there's not a misunderstanding? We're talking about a theater space, the main stage theater space, which is the same as this one. So just so everyone's clear, we're not actually talking about doing Busby Berkeley productions and having 45 people on stage. What we're talking about is doing shows exactly like Evita and exactly like the new works we do with diverse artists.
The forest isn't being seen through the trees, I'm sorry. It's the scale of not just the physical theater space, which I get. There's a place for it, maybe not on this very ideologically important ground that's kind of sacred to most people here and people that sit in those positions. I don't buy it, especially with this effort to move and relocate and do this, that, and the other thing. And working in productions, you start chasing down a rabbit hole. When does it stop? Because you realize, well, we displaced these people, now we need homes for them. Well, we can't build like this, so if the ground's a floodplain, you're gonna build up, so now bigger, taller. It just cascades. It just fuels that bonanza that this community has been, tries they made to hold back for quite some time.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Are there any other questions? Sorry.
Robbie Stein.
Robbie? It's hard for you to see.
Hi, can you hear me? I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm Robbie Stein, and I don't think I'm a creative professional, but I am a shrink. So, but
Definitely
first of all, I've been on Bay Street's board, Cinema Board, the Village Board, and I'm the chairman of South Fork Bakery. And thank you, and thank the Bay Street, by the way, for doing that. There's a confabulation of real problems here. And that's that we need to just keep Bay Street as what the focus is. All of the other things need to get worked out. I mean, thank you, because now we have a mayoral race as well. So that's, one of the side things. And I think it's good to have, dialogue around it. There are actual problems that do run into village politics. To start with, the site you're in, and I think that's what Pam was referring to. Besides being a floodplain and have runoff issues and all of that, Aiden and I both in the past have run the sewer district, so we know what that's about. But you also are not currently zoned for live theater where you're moving. So there's a whole, I think you know that, or you should know that, because the business district does not allow that. So there's zoning changes that have to happen. So I think one of the unfortunate things that happened here was that in intention to build enthusiasm and really create a vision, you've, as you started, run ahead of yourself. So I think Bay Street, I happen to differ with a lot of people. I like the location. I like the idea that a creative space can open to the park. And I have many friends who disagree with me about that. I don't think it's the government's job to tell people where they should be. Be in dialogue for sure. But what I would like you to consider is to realize where you are in the zoning code, what needs to happen to make it happen. Because my fear is that if you can't do it for some reason, there's a giant building sitting there that can be seriously developed. And that's where a lot of the mistrust comes from, Adam. So once again, the other thing I want to say, which none of you talked about, I know many board members of Bay Street. There isn't anyone on this board that doesn't really care about this village. I mean, you could have moved out of here. Wouldn't have been hard if you really wanted to find a place in Bridgehampton. You chose to stay. And the last part of it, because I also met on a board of another theater residence, I know what it takes to do this. It is really hard work. No one's getting huge bucks here. No one is sort of making this happen. And it would, you do need to upgrade to survive. That's, and it's
We
not,
do need to move to survive.
well, that's part of the upgrade.
That's the
Tracy.
bottom line.
And I think that you have people on the boards who want to work with you, whether they disagree or not. You have people in the community that want to work with you, but it's really kind of gotten mixed up now, and there's a lot of fear and rumor. I'm shocked to find out that rumors exist in Sag Harbor, but you need to dissuade that. And a lot of things you're saying, look, for years, it's hard to get office space here. It's hard to get all of that. But in a way, you've gone too far. I think where Duncan started is true. I think you need to come back, just focus on what this vision is and clear the rest up. And, you have a lot of support in this community, and I hope that you make it happen.
Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate it.
I just want to respond to one of those things. We did check the building codes or the codes, and we're actually in the same code as we are right here. It's a village business. It's village business in that property as well. So the codes are exactly the same.
So, I would also just like to mention that having been down this road for 14 years now, at the start of my 14th, the very first thing I said when I arrived here, and of course, Steve alluded to the fact that they wanted Bay Street to be a permanent place in Sag Harbor since day one. So in every, with every board group, including when you were on the board, this is something we talked about on Bay Street's Board of Trustees. And all the time it was, well, let's search. Let's always keep our eyes open. We, in fact, at one point, were looking to move to Southampton. That didn't happen for a number of reasons. I personally, as a resident here, I've raised my daughter here. My husband owns his business. You know, I think it would be a horrible thing for Bay Street to leave Sag Harbor. Maybe other people feel differently, but I feel that it's been a part of this community now for 30 years. It came along with and might have even helped to start the transformation from a place of just the bars. And you know, when I always tell this story that when I first was single and living in the Hamptons, and I lived in Bridgehampton, this was over 30 years ago, we never came to Sag Harbor as single women to go out at night. It wasn't even discussed. It was, there were bars, yes, but there were brawls, and up until, I don't know, how many years was the cigar bar? It only left 10 years ago now. There would still be brawls at 3 or 4 in the morning then. But let's face it, Sag Harbor has changed. And it's become, I think, you know, I mean, people love the grit, it's true, but I think it has become it's gone back almost to its roots of artists. The artists were here first. The people that, you know, wrote books and painted, and they were here at the same time that the makers, the torpedoes factory and all those, they were all here as well. And I think it helped to create a very different village than, you know, other villages out here.
Yeah, I agree, Tracy. I don't think anyone wants to see Bay Street not thrive and not do well. I mean, just as a clarification, Adam, I think that this would be pre-existing. And if you move the code the way it states, I do not think allows for live theater in the business district. But you should,
No,
I'm not, I didn't
Our
write
attorneys
that
say
code,
otherwise,
but
but
I'm
okay.
just pointing it out because what's kind of happened, and many people have said it, is that you've come with a vision and it got way too large. And there's a lot of suspicion. I think Catherine said it really well. I mean, people, and believe me, I know the whole thing about 990s and what can be released and not. I don't, you know, the perception, I don't think is I hope is not your intention, you know, but that's what you're facing.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, the die's cast now. Let's see what happens. Okay.
And
thank you.
as I said, this is just the start of
And I
a
thought you were going
meeting.
to say you
It's great.
raised your husband here, but then,
That too.
I will just say two things. I mean, as Tracy said, we will certainly have more discussions with the community forums like this and others. And while the 90-second decision was made just to give enough people the opportunity to speak, people can come back up if they wish to speak more, of course, today. We definitely want to be in dialogue, and this is an attempt to be transparent and open and answer questions, not,
And-
you know, to exactly address that. The other thing I just want to say is just to make sure everyone knows, the new Bay Street will have a bar. I promise that there will be a bar there, and there will be affordable drinks there. I promise that too.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate, I know we are all listening up here. I'm hearing you loud and clear. I know Scott, Steve, and Adam are too. So this is not, we're not taking this lightly. I've always been transparent. I've run businesses for 30 years. Before this, it was television and film. Theater is my passion. And as I've said to other people, I would not be in bed with someone referred to as a rapacious developer. So I just want you to know I'm listening, and I know all of us are. So with that, next question.
Hi, I'm Lynn Sundberg. We've been out here since '78.
Yeah.
Quick question. It's really specifically on the issue of trust. And since that's one of the main purposes of the meeting. And so the question is for you, Mr. Potter. The one thing that just didn't make sense to me and just seemed illogical and didn't gel is what you are doing as an individual in buying the individual houses and trying to create workspaces. I mean, you're a businessman. I mean, how are you going to offer rents that are really appropriate for, is this just out of the goodness of your heart? I mean, it seems.
Good
just
question. I think it's a
doesn't-
great question.
It doesn't seem logical to me.
Well, so I was raised with in a very philanthropic. My parents did not have a lot of money, but they always said, no matter how much money we have, we need to give back to the community. And I'm a firm believer in that. So did I do well in business? Yes. And do I believe that we need to give back to the community? Absolutely.
So you have no commercial, profit motive in all of these purchases for.
Do I want to lose money? Absolutely not. And I think even if you go back to the properties that I currently own, the two on Rose Street, let's go. Why don't we talk to, the Sean Edison or Shirley? They were paying the same rent since I think 2007. Their rent went up minuscule when they moved. Minuscule. So they're still paying the same rent from when 2007. Could I have rented it for somebody else for a lot more money? Absolutely. Excuse me? No, they moved over on Rose Street. They moved from the 7-Eleven building on Rose Street at basically the same rent that they were paying since 2007. And I'm committed to doing that. There's an apartment above that, and that is at a much lower rent than we could have received.
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean,
But that's your intention, is to keep it
that's
that
the
way.
intention.
Okay. You've answered.
So, yeah, it is.
The one thing I will also say is that when we first started and we were looking at the 7-Eleven building, Adam asked me, what are going to be the biggest issues we have? And I've lived here. I know my daughter, that Chinese food restaurant boy, she was like, Mom, if that goes, you're dead meat in our family. So I said, look, we have a lot of businesses over there that are going to want to stay. What are we going to do with them? Now, these are just conversations we had. Adam went out on his own separately, nothing to do with Bay Street, nothing to do with me. He buys Dodds and Eater and is beginning to move businesses into that. Can he make the rent from that? Sure. You're right. That's a separate business. That's anyone's right to buy a separate building. But he did it to try and help us out because I said, this is going to be a big problem. So that's how it started. Where it goes from here.
I think you talk about transparency and trust.
Yeah.
I didn't have to admit that I owned any of these buildings, right? If you go down Main Street, many of them are in LLC names, like the ones that we set up, but I didn't have to admit that, oh, yes, I own that. And I did. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed that I want workforce housing. I'm not ashamed that I want to create local businesses. I'm sorry if I'm philanthropic. Fault me for that.
Okay.
Yes.
April?
April Gornick, I just wanted to clarify something that you said about the cinema. The cinema was purchased by a group that was a 501c3. It's the Sag Harbor Partnership. We had to form a new not-for-profit, which took about a year, a little over a year, which is the Sag Harbor Cinema Arts Center, so named. That was necessary because the Sag Harbor Partnership did not want to maintain and run the Sag Harbor Cinema. Bay Street Theater is a non-for-profit. It is a 501c3. So I was very puzzled that it was necessary to form a new group, Friends of Bay Street and Sag Harbor Redevelopment, in order to purchase the property. And I'd like to know if you have a time frame or a plan for turning the ownership of that property, which is now Friends of Bay Street and Sag Harbor Redevelopment, to Bay Street Theater. That's my first question.
Let me answer that first then.
Okay.
So I think first is we made a mistake, and I came out many times and I said we made a mistake. We called it Sag Harbor. We said Friends of Bay Street and Sag Harbor Redevelopment. And we went back and we changed our name. And I said that in a government meeting. I've said that to the press. I said, we made a mistake. And we said, what is this redevelopment? And I said, it's redeveloping that parcel of land that isn't very pretty, right? If you look at all that building that was created about 40 years ago, it's not a very architecturally pleasing building. It's gritty. I'll give you that. So we made a mistake. I came out and I said, if I make a mistake, I'm the first one to admit it. And I made a mistake. We made the mistake. We changed the name. So you can say, well, that was what it was first, but our intentions were always the same, to acquire the land, to build the theater and turn it over to Bay Street. As soon as that theater's done, we want to turn it over to Bay Street. We are not, just like the Sag Harbor Partnership, we do not want to run a theater. That is not our job. That is Bay Street's job.
It raised a red flag as well.
And so I'm sorry if it did that, but I'm here to tell you that is not the intent. The intent was for us to
So
build
I can
this
tell
building.
you, April, in terms of Bay Street Board, Bay Street Theaters Board, we've had discussions many, many times. Some on the board felt that we could do this project. Some were very hesitant because they weren't certain that would we be able to raise all this money that would be required. The liability of that is a large one. So when we were speaking to Adam and when we were speaking to the board, we agreed, the board, Bay Street Board agreed that let's divide and conquer here. Let Bay Street's board still be supporting Bay Street. And remember, this was all happening while Bay Street is closed. This was during COVID. And we had all kinds of meetings on Zoom and said, let's make sure the liability right now goes on to this new entity. And Bay Street's board will have the liability of Bay Street, as it always has, of the current operational aspects. Because at that time, when we started, we didn't know when we'd be able to reopen. Was it going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years? Would we ever be able to reopen as a full 299-seat house? We don't even know when that's going to be yet. So that is the truth about why the two organizations, why we separated out what we were doing.
If I may. go
Yeah,
on.
absolutely.
So the second thing is that about a little over 10 years ago, two Russian guys bought up the whole of 135 Ferry Road, which is where Steinbeck Park is now.
Yep.
And the fear was, and I saw many graphics, and I can provide you one from that time, that there was going to be a wall of condos that was basically all along the water that completely separated the water from the village. I understand that you think that a little smidgen of the Cape Pasa, Fort Apache area that's park is going to suffice. In terms of us
No.
not feeling that way, let me finish, please. But I would propose to you that the actual scale of your building, both the height and the width of it, especially now that I find that there are two unnecessary parts on either end, making it even longer than it need to be, at 39 feet high, is going to be really visually, for visual impact, just a little bit shorter than the Bialski buildings, and we've got our wall back. And this is something that I and a lot of people who have been concerned about the development of 135 Ferry Road and rejoiced when Steinbeck Park happened. Of course, the Bialski buildings weren't done then, so it was, a shock. It has been a continuing shock. But this is something that people like myself are reacting to because it's kind of like another wall going up where we'd hope that there would be none. So I'd like you to consider that. I wish that I personally would add my voice to the people that wish that Bay Street could be moved back away from the park. Dodds and Eder looks like a great spot to me, but
It won't fit on that spot, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well,
Also,
if it was shortened, if it didn't have the two unnecessary ends.
The lot is not big enough.
Okay.
Also, just with 135 Ferry Road, those two Russians approached us as well when they were coming up against, what was going to be allowed or not allowed. And they actually wanted to build Bay Street a theater on that property so that there wouldn't be such pushback. So,
Yeah, but you are
Yeah.
going from the very end of the 7-Eleven parking lot all the way to just short of Bialski's building as you have it planned, and that does disturb me greatly, plus the height. So, think about it. It's a suggestion.
thank you, April.
That obviously one can have differences of opinions in terms of architecture and what one likes and what one doesn't. I happened to have tears come to my eyes when I saw the design for the first time because I thought it was so beautiful and so airy and let light and air and sight through. And just a reminder that if Bay Street hadn't bought that, any developer could have bought it and they could have built any number of condominiums across there. We're really trying to make this an access point to the water and to the park. And I mean, I think that this idea of opening up the to Water Street and having that view from the bridge that we saw is just extraordinary. I mean, I can't imagine that looking more beautiful for this village. Others may have a difference of opinion, but I think it's going to be really gorgeous and you're going to see that water a lot more than you see it today through buildings.
A couple of quick questions. I've already asked questions before. Adam, I mean, you simply have to, I would really do it today, but I'm not your lawyer. You got to give these people 3 names out of your top 10 donor list. You simply have to do it before you walk out of here because there's a trust deficit right now and people are really wondering who these folks are. So that it's free legal advice. Name 3 out of the 10 before you walk out of here. The second just thought is a lot of people, I mean, hundreds of people invested, money and time and hope in creating that park. And when you build your theater onto the 7-Eleven parking lot, they feel you're stealing it from them. You're stealing something of value. They contributed $1,000. They got petitions. They did this. They did that, so that view could be maintained. And when you plop your thing down on that parking lot, you're stealing from the people of Sag Harbor. And I can guarantee you, you will encounter litigation on that one point. You cannot steal from the people in this village, and you know that.
Thank you, Duncan. Okay, is there someone else right here? Thank you. Oh, it's our mayor.
Hi, Kathleen Mulcahy, Mayor. Just a simple question. We, Trustee LaRocca talked about that we wanted to, we were looking at it and we had had discussions where CPF dollars were promised, but they weren't committed. You are saying that you're going to sell this to CPF. What happens when CPF says no? Because it's going to be a lot of money and I don't know that CPF is willing to give that money to Sag Harbor at the moment.
We'll have those conversations. I mean, they haven't said yes, they haven't said no. We've already started those conversations. So that's a start. Even though we don't own the builder, or not even in contract with the builder. We said, what do you think about this? So we've had some of those conversations and we've got positive feedback. Doesn't mean we're going to get everything we want by any means. Doesn't mean we're going to get the price that we paid for it. We recognize that. And we're committed to hopefully getting this done for the park and for the village.
And if you don't get the price that you want, are you going to make up the difference?
Well, number one, I'm not invested in this. And I've said that from the very beginning. I've said from also the very beginning, the people that are recognize they will lose money. That's a decision that they are going to have to make. We can come to them and say, listen, we have this offer. If we tear down the building, CPF will give us X. You make the decision. That their goal is to hopefully sell it to CPF and open up the park.
And so that space will not be part of the land that you're looking at for your variances or zoning or anything else.
The space
you can build the building that you have now on the site that you own now.
It depends on if your overlay district passes. There's different codes depending on how much we're allowed setback, how much we're not. There's different codes here. So we don't know what we're allowed until the codes pass or don't pass. We're supportive of your effort, and I'll be the first to say that. We're very supportive of that effort. And there's a lot that will pass or that will be good for the theater if it does, and there's a lot that will be good if it doesn't. So we have to analyze that once we know what the rules are. Tell us the rules, and then we can analyze it and let you know.
Can I just add something here that everyone feels strongly for or against this project? And it's not a distraction, but sometimes it seems like it because there's a lot more properties on the waterfront that are at risk. So I urge you all to support the village's effort for the waterfront code. It's absolutely important. And
Yeah.
find ways to give the village teeth, to keep those things that you want, that we're hearing you want so much. This is just one property. And there's many more to come. So we really need to engage now, especially with the process, because it's winding up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ken Dorff, and I wanted to give a little positive feedback on this. And when I saw the plans, frankly, the first thing I thought is, what an opportunity. As you know, I travel all over the world, 100 countries, and when you come back to the United States, one thing that strikes you is how little public space we have in this country compared to other places. Sag Harbor, public spaces keep being privatized, churches, Maycroft, everything else. And thank you, Eric and
April.
April, I know who you are, for bringing that back in the public sphere. But I think of Bay Street as more than a theater. I think of it as a community center. Do you remember when we had the Raisin in the Sun? We had a discussion on racism right here on this stage. Many people who have lived here for generations came to that discussion. And afterwards, I heard it was the first discussion ever publicly in Sag Harbor on racism on Long Island. It did not happen in a church, a synagogue, or the schools. It happened here. So I see this as a community center, and I love the idea of more public space. The idea that this huge public space could be a dominant thing in the village is, for me, wonderful. I love the idea. I think that's what we should focus on. Let's allow more community space. As far as the location, moving the things that are uglier away from the waterfront and having something that's public towards the waterfront, I think is an opportunity. And frankly, when I looked at that building, I'm not an architect, but my dad was, and my grandfather was a ship chandler in New York Harbor, Norwegian. And I saw what looked like a warehouse on a dock in Oslo. That's what I saw. It's aesthetic. We all have different responses. So my feeling is, you need more transparency. I agree with that, because that's where the rumors start. And you have started this today, and I thank you for that, including investors, if you can do that. But I know a lot of people who are excited, who view this as an opportunity to keep Bay Street walkable in Sag Harbor for our community. We want that to happen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Remkes. My family were the original purchasers and developers of that property. And I like to say, I like the architecture of the building. I think it looks great. I think it's going to soften what's been allowed to be built there, unfortunately. I think we'll blend with what's there. And, I think Bay Street has been such a great force in Sag Harbor. It's really brought the community back. And to say, we don't want change, Sag Harbor's always changed. We had the factories. We were a factory town. You couldn't get around Main Street at 5:30 at night or 5 o'clock when the factories let out. We had more luncheonettes and eateries on Main Street. And of course, we did have more bars and churches. So we've evolved, and Sag Harbor's always evolved. So just say, and to dig in, I don't like change. I think that's wrong. In this building right here, part of the LM was built in this building. So, and now it's changed. So I think that we just I welcome the change. I welcome the building on the property. I think it's a good use of the property. I love the picture of the building from the waterfront. I think that looks really exciting. So good luck. And I hope they keep Bay Street in Sag Harbor. Thank you.
Mr. Remkes, I was just going to ask, so what businesses did your family have on that property?
My family had a 9-unit motel on that property, which then became the 1-800 Lawyers building, which is then raised for the 3 buildings that my grandfather actually started a fishing station there. That was his little fishing shop. Then my uncle took it over. My different aunts and uncles owned the Seaside when that was there. Where Fort Apache was a gas station that my father had owned and had built there. So, they purchased it from the railroad. There was a railroad trestle there where the train came in and turned around. They actually tore it down and burned it and then developed the property. So that's a little piece of the history. And I won't tell you what they paid for the parcel.
Please don't. Thank you. Okay.
So this is Catherine Levy again. You do say that you want a dialogue, but I'm not hearing that kind of give and take here, and I'm going to explain to you why. Okay, Bob made a great suggestion, and Bob and I differ on a lot of things about this project and about the governance of this village, but he made a very important point that you need to rethink this design and make it conform to this village and make it smaller. And there's something that popped out at me, Ken, when I first saw the video about the theater, where you say, this isn't as tall as its neighbor, in other words, the egregious Bialski building. That should not be the new standard for Sag Harbor, because if that's the new standard for Sag Harbor, then we've lost this village. This is too tall, it's too big. You keep hearing the same thing from the people in this room, but I'm not hearing any give. And in terms of what you said about why a new nonprofit, and it's hard to create a new 501c3, was created to raise the capital money for this purchase. Frankly, Tracy, I know that you're one of the smartest arts administrators I've ever encountered. It doesn't make sense to me, because if an entity, Bay Street, wants to have a capital campaign, you put Adam Potter, if you wish, in charge of it. He goes out and gets the donors, and they donate to the discrete, limited capital campaign, and that doesn't increase your liabilities or your development burdens.
We will still have a capital campaign.
But
Trust
no,
me.
no, Tracy, come on, you know what I'm saying. You could have done that for the purchase of this property. And it doesn't make sense to me. And you say, Mr. Potter, you will turn the property over to Bay Street. There's no time like the present. Turn it over this week.
I don't want, so here's the deal. I don't want a piece of land that we can't afford to build on if we can't do the fundraising, if we can't get it through all the codes and have a design that's going to be okay with the village. What do I want that liability for? That's not mine to have. We're here to produce theater. So assuming we can do that and have it handed over to us as a theater, I don't want that liability. Our board's already said they don't want it. We have enough on our plate.
And,
So
and we welcome it. And by the way, I would say we appreciate that you have a different business model.
Yeah.
You're welcome to have your own business model, and we're allowed to have ours. It's completely legal. It's completely transparent. And we appreciate your opinion, but we did something different than you might have. And you know what? It's been working so far.
Well, I also think we are here to listen, right? And what you're saying is, listen to us, it's too big. So right now, make a decision to make it smaller.
I'm not hearing,
Wait,
well,
wait, let me finish. You're saying right now, make a decision to make it small. We're also hearing not people that are not here, but people that are here that say, we love the design. So we need to take it all in. We can't commit to you that we're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to make this smaller. We're going to do, we need to hear, that's what the purpose of this is. I can't, Tracy can't, Scott can't, Steve, none of us can say, we're going to do this because you said that. We're listening to everybody. You're one of many voices we want to listen to. And that was the purpose of today.
Right. And
But
it is.
I never said change this immediately. I did say release the names of your donors, because that is a very big thing. This is this is the reality of what's happening in this village. This project, and I think you're wonderful, Tracy, and I think this is a wonderful theater company. And it's been really a great part of this community. And I too, when I sat here and watched that production of Raised in the Sun, I was actually crying. It was a very important moment for this community and for this theater. So it feels
Thank
funny
you.
to me to be up here opposing you, but I have to. And this is the road that you're going down, and you shouldn't go down it. There were protesters outside of the windmill as I came into the theater screaming, boycott Bay Street.
So-
Almost every young person I know who was born in this village is upset and frightened and angry, and you're not giving us anything to allow us to believe in this as being a part of the
I need to stop you.
Let
Number
me
one,
please finish.
Well, you're out of time. So we have a time limit for a reason.
Fine.
But I think that a lot of the upsetness is because of many of the rumors and innuendos and untruths that were spread about what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think when all of this stuff that we talked about today which is released and the rest of the public understands it, we have a lot of other opinions. We understand your opinion. We've heard you. I've seen your comments on Facebook. I understand what you want. I understand what other people want as well. And we need to balance that. We need to work with the mayor. We need to work with the trustees. We need to work with the village residents. That's the purpose of this. Again, we didn't wait till planning department to go and have this conversation, which we could have done. We knew there was going to be people in the audience that didn't like what we were projecting or what we would like to do. We're okay with that. We also know that we do have supporters. And so we need to balance that. We need to work with our architect and say, let's talk about some kind of tweaks we can do. We understand that, but we can't make a decision at 6:05 today that says we're going to do this. And you started it with Bob and I disagree, but you're not listening to us. We are listening to you, and we want to listen to you, which is the purpose of this forum.
So on that, with that note, it is 6:05. We said we'd have a hard stop at 6 o'clock. And so I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We will have, if anyone has additional questions, you can email them to me directly, tracy@baystreet.org, or to scott@baystreet.org.
SCOTT@baystreet.org.
Yep. And this, as I said, will be the first of many more to come. So thank you all for all of your input.
Thank you, everyone, very much.